Welcome to the Sharp Best Ball Show. I am your host, Todd Burrows, and this is our first live draft. We will be doing live drafts monthly on the different sites. Today, I am joined by Sam Sherman at Sherman_FFB of Ship Chasing. He does a weekly article and podcast for those guys. And all of those guys are really talented. And Sam has been doing some fabulous work. So I am really excited to have everyone on. The comments are open. We will be drafting a live underdog BBM. But first, I want to get to know Sam for a few minutes. He's been doing some good work and he's got some really good theories. I want to understand them better because if you're going to draft together, it's important to kind of at least have a good sense of what's the other guy likes. And I want to show you that we do have the ability to get your comments up here. I'm here to meet local best ballers in my area. In the immortal words of the Ted Lasso show, best ball is life. And I will live and die by that statement. Sam, I like a lot of people fell in love with fantasy football, and you end up drafting a bunch of teams, and then you have to manage a bunch of teams, and you get burnt out. And then you discover best ball, and I call it the one night stand of fantasy football, because basically you get all the enjoyment of drafting without the responsibility. So I'm really glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your latest work. You've done some really interesting stuff as it relates to the small data size we have and how the running back position is being valued in best ball.
Yeah. First off, I just want to say thanks for having me on, Todd. I really appreciate it. Excited to chat some best ball theory and draft a team today. So yeah, just wanted to say that off the top. And yeah, in terms of the research, I think it's really interesting. And first, I can maybe talk about the impetus of my research. It's essentially that when you look at a lot of the data for best ball, particularly for underdog, we all understand underdog's a fairly new format. It's only been around for 3 years. We just have 3 years of data on underdog, and there's a ton of great analysis looking at that data. I definitely go check out Rotoviz, Mike Leone's Best Ball Manifesto, tons.
I love that. That was amazing. I mean, he did really great work, and then they go and change the tournament on him.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing, right? It's like we have a limited sample size, and the tournament keeps changing. So I kind of wanted to look at things at sort of a more fundamental level and expand the sample size. So what I essentially did is I looked at the last 10 years of fantasy scoring. And instead of just basing my analysis on advance rates or finals advance rates, I kind of looked at the volatility of the different positions in terms of delivering spike weeks. Because, and we can get into each of these things individually, but you hear a lot of things in best ball, like, what the flex is a fourth wide receiver position. Wide receivers have more upside than running backs. All these things that you kind of hear as common phrases, and I kind of wanted to investigate, are some of those common phrases and theories in best ball actually true when you look at the numbers and expand to a larger data set? So yeah, that was sort of the impetus of the theory, expand the data set. And Todd, I'm happy to sort of chat through a couple of the I guess myths, I call them, in best ball.
Let's hit them pretty quick because we do want to get to the live draft. Kind of do it in bullet format, and I would like to have you back on sometime in July or August with for a full show where we can kind of go into your work a little bit more. Hit a couple of the key points, and then I've got a very important question based on what I think I understand of your work so far.
Yeah, I'll hit on it quickly, and also I'll link to on Twitter. I'll link to the thread after the show so people can check it out in more detail later. But
you can put it in the comments too if you want.
Oh yeah, I can put it in the comments. Yeah, that's a good idea. Anyways, the quick bulleted form is I sort of looked at 3 myths. The first is the flex is a fourth wide receiver position in half PPR best ball. My research showed that actually the flex is sort of a half running back, half wide receiver position in a sense. Like you'd roughly expect each of those positions to fill that half the time. So yeah, it's more like 2.5 running backs, 3.5 wide receivers. The second thing I looked at,
and that
yeah,
again, I'm always going to jump in because and that really is big picture, not dependent on when you take them, right? In other words, there's a lot more that can go into it just based on how you build a team as well.
exactly, yeah, and it's not to say that like, hey, you should start off your drafts like 3 running backs in a row because the running back can fill the flex. Like in a sense, you could still draft as if you think the wide receiver, like the fourth wide receiver, is filling your flex. I do think in the middle rounds, like I tend to be more wide receiver heavy, but the data is essentially just saying like, hey, you look at how weekly scoring works over the last 10 years, like the third running back on your roster is going to outscore the fourth wide receiver. Like those two are the positions that are competing for the flex, and they're like pretty equal in terms of their ability to fill the flex. So like it's not necessarily like I wouldn't take this point too far and say like this should change how you draft like entirely or flip everything on its head. But it's just saying that like, hey, running backs score in the flex just as much as wide receivers do. So we don't have to be so stubborn and thinking, hey, I can only have a wide receiver in my flex. Like I can't build teams with running backs in the flex. I just don't think that's true in half PPR. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that as well. I'm a big believer in every draft is different, every year is different, right? And a lot of these myths that you talk about open up opportunities for people who are willing to go against the grain. In other words, all this studying is great for letting you know what happened in the past. But what happens when the top 4 quarterbacks are going 3 rounds earlier or 2 rounds earlier? I mean, that takes the dynamic and it spins it on its head. And we have to take what we know about the past and mix it with what we're being presented as of now and come up with strategies to try and figure out the puzzle of this year.
I think that's 100% correct. And I think like going into sort of the next piece of my research, I looked at sort of RB1s versus wide receiver ones, like running backs 1 through 12 by positional ADP versus wide receivers 1 through 12 by positional ADP. And those RB1s actually account for a higher number of spike weeks at the running back position than the wide receivers do. The wide receiver ones do at the wide receiver position. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about how, early wide receivers are safer bets or they're, higher upside bets in the early rounds. And my research didn't really pan that out. So going back to your point, Todd, like I think there's been a lot of historical research that shows like super running back heavy starts don't work super well, but you have to consider how much the ADP landscape changes. And I guess like an illustrative point on that, today in Underdog, you can go running back, and take, the running back 1, Christian McCaffrey, like the running back 7, Nick Chubb or whoever it is, and the running back 9, Josh Jacobs. I might be mixing this up slightly, but
that's presenting at the turn quite often.
Exactly. Yeah. And like historically, like RB bets the historical data might say that's bad, but that's because you've never been able to get 3 top 8 running backs in the first 3 rounds. Like historically, you'd be taking the running back 1, then like the running back 14 and the running back 16 or something like that. Right. So that's the thing to consider. And I'm not saying that running back is optimal. Like that's a leap in logic to get there. Right. But like, I'm just saying you have to consider, hey, with how much the ADP landscape is changing, like some of this historical data, you got to be really careful in how you interpret it because the draft landscape is way different. Exactly to your point, like take the historical data, blend it with the new landscape we're getting, and try to make your best bets based off of that. That's what I'm trying to do the best I can, but it's obviously really tricky and really complicated. But
putting yourself out there, your heart, your soul, your work, right, and trying to figure out these puzzles and having these conversations is making us all better. So overall, to me, the big picture in my mind, and I'm not a numbers guy like you. I wish I was. It's just not a skill that I have. I can do basic numbers, and then my head starts turning into about what it looks like. But to me, running backs are undervalued throughout the whole draft. So the challenge to me is not only, like I have no problem starting running back, but I may draft the fourth, I may not, right? In other words, there's two things that are really important. It's not just when you take your running backs, but how you adjust your whole team based on when you take people early. Taking people early should set up your strategy for that draft, right? And that should give you a big picture sense of what you're going to do in that draft, right? So, but in the second thing is that, as I was trying to say, is, I have great guys that I want because running backs undervalued. There's guys I like at ADP throughout the draft, but in general, I'm stopping at 5 on most. So talk a little bit about how the fact that they're so undervalued opens up way more strategy for me, whether it's a robust running back, whether it's anchor running back, whether it's zero running back. I think all of these are open to being successfully used and things that can give you $3 million if the cards roll right, that you can make great teams because of the flexibility running back gives you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think one way is I'd summarize it. And I think this is either Mike Leone or maybe Pat Crane came up with this. But, I think in general, you can take running backs early or you can take a lot of running backs, but you probably shouldn't do both. To your point, if you start off 2 or 3 running backs early, you should probably stop at, 4, maybe 5, right? Whereas if you pass on running backs the first 6 or 7 rounds, I think you then should load up your roster with 7, maybe even 8 running backs in some situations. So that's a thing, right? Where to the point you made, where each individual running back value looks so good in this landscape where all the wide receivers are pushed up, that doesn't mean that you can just hammer running backs at every pick, because you need a bunch of wide receivers, right? You need 3 in your starting lineup. You got to be very careful in how you allocate draft capital position. So to your point, I think it does open up more flexible strategies where in the years past, like I would be very hesitant to target like some of the dead zone running backs. Whereas this year, I think like actually, Miles Sanders is kind of fairly priced relative to the wide receivers that go near him. Aaron Jones to me looks pretty fairly priced next to the wide receivers that go
I
next.
think they're both good deal. Well,
Yeah.
Miles, I think, is fairly priced. I think Aaron Jones is a good deal. And I also like Dameon Pierce a tremendous amount in that range.
Exactly. Yeah. And, we might have different player takes. Like, I think for me, I'm a little less excited about Pierce, but I'm with you on Jones and Sanders. But, people have different stances on players. That's totally fine. I think the point being,
that is exactly what you said.
yeah, exactly. The point being, like, you just got to be careful. Like, I think Leone's best ball manifesto really showed you don't want to over allocate draft capital to the running back position. I think it's just kind of a math thing where, hey, there's 3 wide receivers in your starting lineup and 2 running backs, then a flex that splits down the middle. Like, you need more wide receiver capital than you need running back capital. So yeah. And the last thing I'll add, I know we're getting to the draft now. Like, I do think historically that in comparing running backs through wide receivers throughout the draft, running back ones versus wide receiver ones are historically pretty good bets. The early running backs actually come out, in the way I look at things, as better bets than the early wide receivers. So like, to me, that's a signal that like, okay, if I do sort of need to limit my draft capital at running back to some extent, my favorite place to sort of target them is in the early rounds. And for me right now, that's sort of the 2-3 turn. I think there's a really good cohort of running backs there that I think are about a round to a half round undervalued, in my opinion. So that's been my approach to like how I'm translating my research to strategy.
Can you see? I hate to interrupt you, but can you see this? Okay.
I can. Yeah. Is it possible to make it a little bigger? I can see it, but not super clear.
I'm trying to hold on. Let me see if I can. Did that help?
Yeah, that helped. If you maybe just continue to zoom in a little. Yeah, that's definitely
Oh,
helping.
all right. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. All right. So I put in, and we can keep talking as we do this. We got a nice middle of the draft, so we're going to have a couple minutes in between. Uh, is there anybody that I put in the queue that you don't like, and is there anyone that's not in the queue that you'd like for the next pick?
For me, I think I'm pretty in tune with ADP here, where I would be choosing between Cup or Bijan, whoever falls to us. I think that's sort of a tier break for me.
And
I
and
think
and both
yeah,
fell. So as a tiebreaker, because of the value that's out there, I prefer Cup. If you're okay with that,
totally good with Cup. Yeah, let's do it.
I did. I have a form where. All right. So then the next thing I do is I count we're how many picks away? 8 picks away. So we need 9 guys in the queue.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're planning out your queue. Okay, I see. That's a
Right.
smart way to do it.
That's how. So that's 8, and I like Waddle, and I know you like Chubb. Um, we started without one of the top quarterbacks stacked, so I normally pass. Is there anyone else you'd like to have thrown in the queue?
This seems pretty
I
good
like
to me.
Pollard.
Yep, I was gonna say like I think I'm even Pollard ahead of. I think I'm Pollard and Chubb ahead of Waddle and Amon-Ra, but I'm not super hard line about that. But I think we'll see how it falls to us. I like the players in the queue here. I'm with you on passing the QBs. I don't think it makes sense to grab them without the stack partner. So I'm pretty in on these guys. Do you have a favorite of the?
I've got. I think the two most egregiously priced running backs early are Pollard and Ramondre. I think that both of them are going to be 2.4, 2.5 by the time this is all said and done. But one thing about me is I'm a big believer in 5.15 for the first 2 rounds. I want pretty much 4 or 5% minimum and 15 max on, because injury to me is worse than any difference in a projection I have on a guy this early. So I'm really open to who you want here next. I mean, Garrett Wilson is kind of a no-brainer, but because we can get running backs later, it opens up Aaron Rodgers. But if he's gone, I'm open to whoever you like. Whoever,
Yeah,
when I put people in the queue, it means that I'm okay with everyone I put in.
I see. I like, you know what? I think playing the ADP, even though I agree with you that Chubb and Pollard I think are going to rise, I also don't think Wilson is going to fall. So I'm good with playing the ADP game,
I want
getting Wilson
Wilson.
here. Yeah, and then we
I want
can,
Wilson. All
yeah, then
right,
we can get a
so
running back coming back probably.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think it's important to do this because you don't want to be thinking when you're on the clock.
Yeah, this is it's interesting to see how different people use their queue. Last year with all the week 17 stuff, I was doing the thing where once I picked a player on a team, I would search for that team in the queue and then star those players, and then like the week 17 bring back, I would star all those players, and that quickly just gets out of hand because you have like a bajillion players in your queue. But
Do you,
I like your way of doing it, but it's just it's funny to see how
well,
different people do it.
as long as you have a plan
Yeah,
and that plan works for you. But what I do, I normally have the overlay from Spike Week. Do you use that?
I don't use that actually, but I've seen it. It looks pretty cool.
I
I
don't
know
know
that.
why it didn't show up, because I did put it in. Oh, I know why, because we're on Chrome. It's only on Firefox this year. Yeah, I mean that will give you different colors for stacking. It'll give you your ownership percentage on different pairings and things like that. I love it, and it's only $25 a month.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty
if
good.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm hoping Ramondre falls here. We've got 12 names in the queue, and we're 8 picks away. So we've got more. than we need. I put it this way so that you could see Debo and all the guys that I didn't put in the queue. Just so if there is someone you want to add, I can add it for you.
Yeah. I'm good with how you set it up. Hopefully we don't need to dip down that far, but we'll see. I'm with you that Ramondre would be my favorite target.
And there
Oh,
he goes.
there he goes.
And I would be okay with Brees. And I think Walker. I don't want him in the third.
No, I don't want him either. It seems a little too risky there with the pass catching projection and Charbonnet. I still think, Walker's talent is really good, but yeah, if we miss out on
I don't
Breeze,
have ETN in the queue, but I'm lower on him than consensus. So if you want him in,
I'm also been lower than him on versus consensus. Okay. Okay, this is interesting. This is very different from how I normally built teams, so I think this will be fun.
yeah.
Um, I probably would go Andrews
And
here.
I have almost, and this is a key point about partnering with someone. It gets you into different builds.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of early tight end because there's so many late ones I like. I'm okay with Fields or Andrews here. But so I'll let you
Yeah.
make the choice.
Let's go. I also don't have a lot of Andrews. But I think now with Lamar back, he's pretty interesting. I'm good with I'm good with going Andrews, and
All
I
right.
think even if
So
we don't get Lamar, that's fine. Andrews,
I don't think we will. In
yeah,
fact, he
probably
just
not.
went,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
The thing about the switching from the 20 to the 18 rounds now is I do think the elite tight end is like a little more valuable because it lets you save that roster spot instead of having to go 3 tight end. So I was doing a bunch of 3 tight end late in the pre-draft stuff just because the 20 rounds like kind of lets you do that. But now I think like the roster construction edge with the elite tight end, I think Andrews is a good pick.
I've been doing early quarterbacks and 3 tight ends, but I'm
Yep.
happy to switch that up here, especially since we've got Cup and Garrett Wilson. It allows for us to take our first quarterback later than we normally would. So I kind of like how we balanced off here,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, I definitely like the 2 running backs, and we're 3 picks away that are up top in the 4th.
Yep.
So would you agree?
Yeah. I am
We can get
hoping.
Najee or Walker. I like either of them in the 4th.
Yeah. I'd probably go. Personally, just because the the ADP stuff, I would go ETN just because we're getting a bit. I'm kind of with you that I'm a below market on ETN, but I still think he has a lot of touchdown potential on the
I
Jags.
He
Oh,
just
he's gone.
went. I was
Yeah,
just about to tell you that I'm all on board with that because when I do take guys I don't like, I like a discount.
yeah,
So I was going to agree with you and take him. I like Walker more than Harris, but I'm okay with Harris here. If you want whichever one of those 2 you want is fine by me.
let's go Harris, just because I do think Walker's ADP is going to continue to trickle down here based on the Charbonnet stuff. So I think you'll be able to get um Walker slightly later in a couple months. That's my guess. So that's sort of the logic there. But yeah, this is interesting. I don't have many Najee teams, but I think at this point, the offense could be about a lot better than it was last year. I do think there was some stuff where his injured foot was dragging him down last year. There's some splits where in the second half of the year, he was much better than the first half. So I think the book.
I also like the
Yeah.
fact that I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, go ahead.
I also like the fact that they invested in the offensive line, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like the way this team is going to run, they're. I don't think they're going to unleash. So one thing that I've learned to be better at as I've gotten older is to kind of seesaw. And what I mean by that is if you're not on one player on a team, then you have to figure out, well, who is going, if you're right, how do you double down on being right?
Mhm.
And one way is, if I'm avoiding Pickett and by his wide receivers as well, because if I don't believe in the quarterback and I don't want to stack, I'm going to have just less natural of the wide receivers. Well, Najee then is a way to double down when you're right. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Are you saying that like if we hit on these early wide receivers, we won't need as many sort of wide receiver points filling our lineups, and like we should sort of bet on the fact that we hit on those guys early? Is that
Well, and also if I don't believe in Pickett,
yeah.
then the scenario is one of the ways he
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
win
Yeah.
is if Najee does.
Yep.
That they're more run heavy. In other words, that's a way to double leverage a play.
Yeah. That
It's
makes
all.
sense.
I do that with starters and backups. I've learned the hard way. If you, let's say, I'm not on Najee, I just don't like his eight. Or ETN. I'm not on ETN. Well, a way to double up on that is to draft some Tank Bigsby, because if ETN's not getting the workload, well, then I double my advantage by, if Tank Bigsby's the guy who takes it from him, now I've kind of doubled my play. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I see what you're saying. I do that too oftentimes. Like, well, if I'm fading the early running back and I'm not taking in the backups, like what kind of stance am I even taking? So I do agree with that. I like a lot of the wide receivers here.
I'm going to put them in the order that I like the players right now, and then
Okay.
I'm going to let you decide who you like the best. But I'm good with any of these top four, really.
Yeah, I am too.
You got 16 seconds for you to make the choice.
I like I like Judy.
I do too.
Yeah. I think, I mean, who knows with Russell Wilson, that's obviously a pretty volatile projection with that offense, but I don't think Sutton. I think Judy kind of showed last year he's the alpha target earner in that offense, and if Sean Payton can turn it around, I think he's the biggest beneficiary. So he's not a guy I've taken a ton of, but he fell pretty far past ADP there, and felt like a good bet at that point.
And he also opens up for us to draft Russ, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't get your number one quarterback, and Rodgers and Wilson go right around each other. If we want Rodgers to go with Wilson and we don't get him, well, then Russ is right there.
yeah,
And that's kind of how you plan your teams out. So I like all three of the running backs here. I like all four, but you said you didn't like Pierce that much, but I don't think he'll make it anyway.
no, I don't think he'll make it. Yeah, let's see.
Is there anyone that I'm missing that you like of the next
Um,
guys?
in terms of the running back, I think I prefer. I like Akers okay, but I don't think I would take him. I'd add him to the queue maybe, but I don't think I'd rank him above Mixon or Pacheco or Pierce. Um, let's see.
I like Pittman if he falls.
Yeah, I like Pittman. I like. I think I would be. Could you go back up to the top of the queue for a
Yeah, I
second?
mean, I feel like Pittman, Pierce, Pacheco, and Mixon are all really good here.
Yeah, I would probably go Pittman or Pacheco.
I'm just going to throw out there, and I'm fine
Yeah,
not taking him because I'll have a lot of Pierce. They really didn't add anyone.
yeah.
And that offense is going to be better, and they got offensive linemen as well. I'm cool with Pittman here,
Okay.
and I'm cool with Mixon. I think both of them.
Yeah,
I think Mixon fits the team better.
yeah. You know what? I'll go Pierce. Let's take a share. I think
You don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah.
As one of my favorite bands from the Manchester scene always used to say, "You don't have to tell me twice." Now I can't think of something Mondays. All right, so we got 13 now.
Pierce is Pierce is interesting because, like, to me, I feel like if we didn't just have, I think so many of like the day three running backs have sort of been wiped out. And like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but I think where drafters are wary of the rookie running back who was a 4th-round pick, does really well, and they think, he's going to be replaced. Like, he doesn't have a lot of security. But you make a good point that it's really just him and Singletary, and I don't really think Singletary's talent is that strong, nor did he get that big of a contract. So I could see a world where Houston's offense is much better just by replacing Mills with Stroud, and then Pierce has a lot more upside. So
I think he's a good running back, right? And I
yeah,
like to draft talent and I like to draft youth.
yeah,
And I think he could be a better pass catcher. They improved the offensive line. He's one of my highest owned running backs in early best ball. And I got a little scared when they brought in Singletary. I do like Singletary, but I think he's going to be the change of pace guy.
hmm yeah. I think that's more likely.
I think Mixon is underpriced now too. They added nobody.
Yeah, Mixon. The only thing for Mixon, right, is the suspension risk. I think that's what people are baking in, because if he didn't have those legal issues, I think he should be like a 3rd or 4th-round pick, like going close to Najee probably.
I agree, and we're
Yeah,
getting a 4 round discount for, we've seen how many Kamara last year. The
yeah.
case got pushed to the next year. I'm not saying you go crazy and get 20% Mixon, but I think he's a 12 to 15% guy possibly.
Yeah, and he's jumping up a little bit too. I think even when I did ADP chasing last week, he was pick 80. Now he's pick 72 by ADP. So I think people are catching on to the discount. I think right now he's worth taking some shares on.
So out of
Here,
the next group,
yeah.
I like Monty more than White. I think people are overestimating what Jameer Gibbs is going to be. I also like Treylon Burks a lot. So any of these top 4 guys I really like.
Mhm.
Anyone else in the queue is okay. Is there anyone I missed?
That looks pretty. Yeah, I think these are the guys I would be considering. I like Cooks. I agree with you. I don't love Gabe Davis's price.
I
The one
think
guy I'm kind of
Hollywood
out
is
on.
too cheap. I think Montgomery's too cheap.
Yeah, uh,
Um,
I would probably go Marquise Brown here.
I agree.
Yeah, just because we have made, we did take the 2 wide receivers early, but we have made 2 like pretty early running
Well,
back
now
bets.
we got 4 really explosive.
Yeah.
So again, all right, we talked about how to balance your team, right? Marquise Brown is a home run hitter. When you've got a 1st and 2nd round pick who are guys who are going to give you great floor every week, now you've got Judy and Brown who can give you spikes. And then we've got Andrews. We've got 2 good running backs. This team's coming along pretty well.
Yeah, I like the structure. I think like a general rule, and I'm not, 100% of the time doing this, but the 4 wide receivers through 7 rounds, I think is generally a good rule of thumb to think about in drafts. Just because I do think there is something to the fact that wide receivers are going so early this year. You need to start 3 of them weekly, and they dry out pretty quickly. So I think you definitely don't want to ignore them too much in the first 7 rounds. So I like how we build. It's a good balanced. This is typically how I'm building, right? 2 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and then either an elite quarterback or an elite tight end. That's generally like what my teams look like through 7 rounds on average. And I think, yeah, we're doing a pretty good job structurally. Okay, so I guess the question is, quarterback when we start thinking about that. We do have some stacking partners coming up, right? But I don't think we need to reach for that yet.
Well, so see, I mean, to me, if Montgomery's gone here, let's just take Rodgers. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of pressure off, and we're going, 13 picks too early. But I have the feeling Rodgers is going to end up being early, unless there's a guy you really like. All right, I can't wait because I think Montgomery's a steal here.
I'm good with Montgomery here. Yeah, 10 picks past ADP. I like it. The Detroit thing is super interesting, right? Because obviously they have a plan for Gibbs. They took him really early, but it's a team last year that funneled a ton of running back, fantasy points to their running backs. And I kind of see that holding this year. I mean, they really just have a Monroe at wide receiver. Jameson suspended for the first 6 weeks. They only have a rookie tight end and pretty weak wide receiver depth. I think it could be a passing offense that funnels a lot of looks to the running backs to both Montgomery and Gibbs. And I think at the goal line, I have a hard time seeing them use 199-pound Jahmyr Gibbs over Montgomery. So I'd have to make him.
Alabama didn't give Gibbs goal line.
Yeah, I'd have to. He's a huge favorite for the goal line looks, and I mean, Jared Goff's not running in the goal line, right? So,
if I may,
yeah,
Goff is still not a great quarterback, right? And they've got a great offensive line. I just find it hard to believe that they gave $15 million to Monty, that he's not going to get at least the role that Jamal Williams had.
Yeah. I agree. I think he's going to get. So this is how I'd put it. I think you would project him for a bigger role than Jamal Williams. But that said, Jamal Williams' touchdown luck last year was just insane. Yeah. So he's not going to run into that kind of touchdown luck, but
Montgomery's a better running back than Jamal Williams.
Yes, I agree. So I think, and he adds much more in the passing game than Jamal Williams does. So I think at around this range, pick 90. Montgomery's going to contribute.
And they're already talking about Gibbs going out wide. I mean, that never happens. But my point is that I feel like Montgomery, if Montgomery was going where Gibbs was going and Gibbs was going where Montgomery was going, I'd be drafting a ton of Gibbs.
Sure. Yeah.
I just think that there's a lot more outs for Montgomery when did we draft him? In the middle of the 8th round. I mean, we're talking about having I always like to draft a solid floor, and I want to tell myself a story that a guy can crush ADP. And I think Montgomery in the 8th round gives me that.
Yeah. And I've never really got the hate for David Montgomery because I don't know. I feel like people describe him as this boring running back that doesn't have upside. He literally broke fantasy football in 2020 for a 6-game stretch where he was just winning fantasy leagues. And that was with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback for the Bears. I think a 6-game stretch, I looked into this, he averaged 24 or 23 half PPR points per game over that 6-game stretch to end 2020. So man, he if he has the role, I think the dude has upside. And I'm not expecting to do that obviously, but he's the type of guy where if Gibbs were to go down, I would project him to have a pretty massive role and massive upside in that offense. And even with Gibbs there. Okay. Here, I think Rodgers to me is a pretty obvious pick, right?
Yeah. I was holding my breath.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a no-brainer.
This question's interesting. I also don't see him getting cut, but I think it's the type of thing where if he does get cut, it's because something really bad happened with the legal situation, in which case I'm not sure
what anyone else is going to pick him up.
Exactly. That it's kind of binary to me, right? I think he's either there or he's suspended and not playing. I don't think there's really too many middle grounds for him at this point. I could be wrong, but that's how I'm thinking about it.
I'm super stoked by this team right now.
Yeah, this is fun.
I'm not a Charbonnet guy. I like these 3 running backs a lot. I'm not a Beckham guy here. I had him in because he was next.
Yeah, I'll take Beckham out. Let's see. And what can you just see what other wide receivers are available right now? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. I was just going to do that. So I think Lazard becomes a possibility.
Yeah. That's
I
what I
think,
was going to say for the stack. That is pretty interesting, but
I don't feel the need to force it.
no.
If I got a one with the quarterback, normally I like skipping to the three. I'm okay with Sky Moore.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. I think I'd be a lot, and Elijah Moore. I think I'd even go Elijah Moore over
Oh yeah, there you
Lazard.
go. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, absolutely. I like Elijah more than either of the other two.
Yeah.
I do feel like these two running backs, if they make it, are no brainers.
Yeah. I like
And I
that
like
too.
Damian Harris too.
Yeah. Man, all these running backs are pretty good. Um,
I think we take one of these running backs and then we just force ourselves not to and then we just force ourselves not to take another running back till the end.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I think this allows us to go 5 with the 5th running back pretty late, which I think is that's a bummer. HN goes. Okay.
I know that's who I wanted. I
Mm,
think I like both of these guys. Let's look at the running backs we have. We have more touchdown backs than anything else. So I don't mind. I think P. Ryan fits in. I think Harris is a lot more like the three guys we got. And I think P. Ryan gives us something different, a guy who could catch 60, 70 passes. And I think we're
sure.
going to get him no matter what.
Sure. I'm good with that. Yeah, it
Sorry
adds
about that.
to
I talk too much.
no, it's good. I was fine with that. I think if I'm drafting by myself, I like Harris, so I click him, but I am totally good with that.
I normally would be too, except I like to balance my rooms with different skills,
Mhm.
and I feel like all three of our top guys are touchdown guys, and so
Yeah.
is Harris, where
Mhm.
P Ryan gives us that kind of 3-4 catches a week.
Yeah. I'm with that. And I was going to say it would have been interesting if Russ made it back because that I think the
That
although
would
I
have been
don't
that would
love
have been a no brainer.
the quarterback
We
running
could
back stacks, I think they're
I
interesting with the pass
yeah
catcher. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
All right,
but
so I'm not on Jamal Williams. I'm going to go player by player because now we're getting later, and there's a bunch of guys I don't like. I don't think Goff fits this team.
no.
Tell me if I'm wrong on any of them. I'm
Yep.
not. I'm not a Jamal guy. Not with the guys we have. I'm not a Schultz guy here. Boyd is okay.
Yeah.
Kyler, I don't think fits. I think Zay.
My other thing with Kyler is did we get Marquise? I
Oh yeah,
forget.
we did.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I
You're
don't
right.
love Kyler
No,
at the in a
two,
vacuum, but with Marquise, I think he's somewhat in play.
I think two heads are better than one in this case.
Yeah. I'm pretty with you on these player selections. I like Pierce. Let's see. I'd like Kendre okay. I
Yeah,
think
but I don't want to take a fifth running back
yeah,
yet.
that's true. That's true. We want to be careful on the running backs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
against it, but if there's a really great value, but as a
Yeah.
tiebreaker right now, I'd like to,
You're right. You're right. Yeah.
and I wouldn't even mind reaching for Stafford on the second pick.
Yeah. And what others can we look at our wide receivers again? I'm just trying to remind myself what other potential stacks or sorry, the wide receivers on our roster.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's basically just Stafford.
See how he's doing that? This is really good stuff. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, yeah, it's just
But
yeah.
you're
I'm
you're
trying to
really doing good stuff here.
complete the stack, and yeah. So for us, it's just Roger. Or we already have Rogers, so it's just Stafford and Kyler, the potential stacks. That's interesting. Okay.
I don't mind stacking without the quarterback.
No, I'm good with that too.
And I think Judy and Dulcich, we're going to stop at two tight ends. I think Dulcich is a great value. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm on Dulcich just because I'm a little worried about Sean Payton bringing in Troutman and Albert O's there. I'm just like a little bit. They also Dulcich played a lot in the slot, and they brought in Mim, so I'm just a little worried.
Okay.
Like,
And I
how?
like Mims.
Yeah, I'm just like, how are the snaps going to play out with the tight ends and the? So that's why I'm a little bit. I would definitely be in on Dulcich if we had Russ, but I think I'd probably hold off. I think here I'd be inclined to. What do you think about Kyler here for the late season upside?
I think it's a no-brainer because this is
Yeah.
going to be a 3 quarterback team
Yep.
because we're stopping at 2 tight ends.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think Kyler is absolutely a great pick here.
Yep. Let's do it. And then I
Now
think,
we
yeah. Go
now we
ahead.
need to really focus on wide receiver for a while.
Yeah, you're right. We got to get some more. We just got to get starters. we're playing snaps and running routes, but there's some targets still. But I agree. I think we have to go wide receiver with this next pick. I like Nico. I like.
I own a lot of this guy.
Yeah, I like Rondale, especially if we have Kyler.
Yeah, and I think he's the type of guy who, we've got all these home run hitters. I think Rondale and Marquise is a really interesting stack because if one goes down, the other. I don't know. I mean, Rondale, his advanced numbers.
Yeah,
shout out to Billy Musio, and there was one other guy who on Twitter who, talked about how Rondale, if he hadn't been hurt, we'd be maybe looking at a guy going a lot earlier based on how well he actually played.
I agree with that. His target rate numbers looked really good, and yeah, that's another team that now I guess it's a little trickier that it seems like there's a chance Hopkins actually stays. I was going to say he has a clear path to playing even 2 wide receiver sets, but now that's a little trickier with Hopkins likely there. But I still think I like his value. I think we're obviously a bit early to be talking about him. We'll have a couple rounds, but I'm with you. I think he's a pretty solid value.
I think either Hyatt or Moore makes a lot of sense if they make it here. And you said you like Pierce. And I think he's kind of one of those guys, Pierce, who is never open but can win contested catches. I am not as high on him as last year. I drafted a lot of him, but I'm not. I like. I'm big on Jelani Woods.
I like Jelani.
I like Pittman a lot. So. I mean, I think Sky Moore, if he makes Sky's a no-brainer.
I'd go with Sky. Yeah, he's fallen quite a bit.
Yeah, at this point, they manufactured touches from last year. I think all the more they'll do that this year.
All the more. Yeah. Yeah, he's an interesting one. I wonder if he's falling because, on ADP chasing, we're always looking at how the ADPs are chasing, and Rashee Rice is shooting way up. I wonder if the complement to that is people see Sky being the biggest loser from that. So I'm just wondering if that's why he's falling. But I think he's a fine value in what is this, the 12th round? Like he was a prospect we liked. It's not.
I drafted almost none of them last year because I thought he was hyped too much.
Yeah.
And I don't like rookies that come from small schools when they get hyped because it takes some time for them to adjust to the pro game. But I think he is a post-hype sleeper.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I was kind of like in a vacuum out on him last year, but Mahomes was so cheap last year, right? He was like in the 6th or something. So I was taking a bunch of Mahomes, and then I was like, I don't love this guy, more value, but he's a stack. I'll take him. So I ended up being like kind of at market with him purely for stacks, and it didn't work out. But yeah, he was crazy. His price got crazy last year.
Yep, I agree. And, look, we could have been wrong. I mean, one thing I know going into every year is I'm going to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be wrong a lot. And that's why I like challenging my biases. So it'll be interesting to see who makes it here.
Yeah. Who can we look at the wide receivers again? That might be a little bit farther down. Yeah. Okay.
I
I
like
actually
Josh
don't mind.
Downs.
Yeah, Josh. I don't mind Rasheed Rice or Gallup either. If Rasheed,
Well, if we take Rasheed to go with, see, this is the kind of thing that I do like because if you stack the two KC guys, you get a good chance that one of them really does well. And we're not counting. I mean, we've got four really good wide
yeah,
receivers. And I feel like that gives us the opportunity to get a little cute with the other
yep,
choices.
yep. I'm with you. I think I would take a stab on Rasheed if he falls here. I guess another thing to consider is no. I think we can for Stafford. I think we can wait till our next pick. I do kind of think about do we just lock up Stafford as our third QB and then be done? Just because I think Stafford does have some upside, especially when we have Cup. But I think we can wait.
I think Stafford's a no brainer because if Cup kills, Stafford's probably going to kill. But I also like Rondell to complete the stack, so I'll let you choose. I
You know
like I
what?
like I like both.
Let's go Stafford and not get cute, and we'll pick a wide receiver in a couple picks.
Yep, I agree.
Um, yeah, I mean Stafford. It's crazy, you know what 1 year can do to a player, and Stafford went from winning the Super Bowl, being an absolute smash in fantasy. I think he was what QB 7 or something that year. Um, to people just leaving him for dead this year. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think he's like a pretty good value
I
right
agree
now.
100%. And
Yeah,
I think that this team needed, with the two quarterbacks we had, we needed a pretty solid third one.
yeah,
I let you make the choice, but I was hoping you would take Stafford.
yeah. I think whenever I'm like unsure of a pick, I always default to just like grab the stack. Like if you don't really know what the better pick is, just stack it up. It's probably you get that correlational benefit. Yeah, this is a fun QB room, right? Because you can see how this works in week 17, where Stafford and Rodgers are probably going to be pretty volatile because they're pocket passers and don't offer any rushing. And Kyler's the interesting guy who can do a little bit of both. Hopefully, he's healthy. It could be with all the stacks. It's a pretty fun QB room for the playoffs.
I think the whole team is pretty fun.
Yeah,
So I'm a big one for balancing my talent throughout. I mean, we've got three, we have late quarterback, but I could see Rodgers being a top 3 or 4 quarterback this year if they let him throw the ball.
yeah,
Kyler, we all know, is going to probably start late. So we got Stafford, who we think might break down at the end. I love that. I think I think we're actually at the point where we could take a running back again if we like one, or
yeah.
continue pounding wide receiver, and because there are a lot of tight ends late that I like.
Yeah, I'm thinking like our second tight end can be, and especially because McBride, Conklin, like we have some stacking guys super late too. I'm inclined to wait on the tight end.
Yep.
Um,
And
and
if
let's
Rondell makes it back here, I mean,
Yeah. What do you think about Rondale versus some of these rookies? Rasheed goes. Yeah, for me,
well,
I guess
we've
it'd be
got
Rondale versus Hyatt. What do you think?
well, I mean, I think Hyatt. I love Hyatt. I know the negatives against him. So we've got the stack with Rondell, but if you want Hyatt, I'm fine with it.
Let's let's take the risk on Hyatt. I think we already have the stack. I think we can maybe even wait on Rondale till the next round. We'll see. But the thing with Hyatt that's interesting is that
You don't have to twist my arm to take Joe and Hyatt. 36 picks past ADP.
yeah. And I think he will, that ADP probably reflects like he's gonna slide a little bit, but I don't think he's gonna slide. I mean, the Giants wide receiver room is just wide open. And I know Hyatt had his flaws as a prospect, but I think it's still a pretty exciting landing spot in terms of just the chance for the guy getting on the field right away and maybe even starting in 2 wide receiver sets, I think there's a decent chance he does that down the stretch. And you know what? He's super fast. He's going to stretch the field. I think it's an interesting upside play, particularly down the stretch. So we'll see how it pays off. The thing with Rondale that just worries me is like now, is he a slot only guy with Hopkins and Marquise there, and like how valuable is that? That's what I'm trying to think through. I know some of the underlying metrics look good on him, but like
I'm gonna have a lot of Rondale. So again,
Okay.
I don't mind passing on him.
Yeah.
I think he is a great complement to Hollywood, regardless of whether Hopkins is there or not, right? There's the guy that you send long, and then there's the guy who's short.
Yep.
So I think that, and who's their offensive coordinator now? Who's their offense? I'm spacing, but
look it up. Drew Petzing.
yeah, and who's the head coach?
It's
my God, Gannon. Yeah, I don't like Gannon much.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm fine with it. I do think Rondale has risk, and I think if I could sum up what you were saying, Rondale has risk.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he's certainly interesting. I liked him as a prospect. I think he does have. I guess my question for you is like, if Rondale really smashes in fantasy, isn't he much more valuable in in full PPR than half PPR? Like he strikes me as like, the guy.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah. So that's my like concern. But we're at pick 176. He completes a stack. I would, if he falls to the next pick, I would be totally.
Well,
totally
there's one other guy that I have amazing amount of love for.
Spears.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, they took him. He got pretty good draft capital, right? Round 3.
Everyone's bummed out about his knee. It ain't going to bother him the first year. Yeah. And the king is breaking down. And what's his name just said that they see Spears as a 3-down back. I think he has an amazing floor with a lot of upside. So I'm okay with Spears or Rondale here.
Okay.
And so if you're okay with Rondale, if you're okay with Spears, if there's anyone else you like here, let me know.
Let's see. I'm good with Spears, and we can play the ADP game one more time with Rondale, I think.
You never have to twist my arm. I think I have him in. This is my 7th. I think I have 6 Spears shares so far.
Yeah. But yeah, the ACL thing is interesting, right? Because that's usually how people talk about it, that it's a long-term concern, but
it's affecting his ADP in the short term.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's unlikely at this point we see this, but we have had the Derrick Henry trade rumors all off season. There's crazier things that have happened than the Titans deciding, hey, we're sending Tannehill to the Falcons, we're sending Derrick Henry to the Eagles or whoever wants him, and we're blowing this thing up. In which case, Spears gets, has a huge ADP rise. Obviously, that's, I think, a 10%, 5% outcome, but I think it's in the range of outcomes for him. Okay, interesting. So we're done. I'd say we're certainly done at running back. We're certainly done at quarterback. I think it's pretty clear one more tight end, and then
who do you like? Who else should be in the queue for wide receiver here? I like Claypool.
Yeah, Claypool. I like Van just because we have Stafford.
Okay. Paris is an interesting guy because we have.
Yeah. I like Darius Slayton, super deep guy, but I think we already have on him, which is interesting. But
we're up. I love Marvin Mims. I'm okay with anyone in the queue.
I would go Tyquan Thornton here. I like Mims too.
I keep meaning to take him, and I haven't. And I want to run an idea that I had by you.
Sure.
And I haven't taken him because I keep this. I love Pierre Strong from last year. Had a lot of them early. Everyone talks about how Ramondre past, they didn't draft a running back. I'm starting to think that I want one Patriot on every team because they got rid of what's his name, the ex-head coach of the Lions.
Yeah, Patricia.
They got a real offensive coordinator now. Every one of them on the team is so cheap.
Yep.
I'm starting to think that you want to walk away from every draft with a Patriot.
I like that line of logic. And what's interesting is 2 years ago when they had McDaniels, basically the same offensive personnel. They had Mac Jones at quarterback. They had Jacoby Myers. They had some slightly different players, but largely the same team. They were sixth in the NFL in scoring, offensive scoring, not including defensive scoring. They scored more points than the Bengals. They scored more points than the Rams. These were the two teams that were in the Super Bowl that year. People forget that offense was pretty good. It was, unconventional, a lot of points to the running backs, but it was a good offense. And I think there is potential that, just with a real offensive coordinator in the building, they could return to competency on offense. And, who's going to benefit from that? I think Thornton, second round pick last year, Juju, I think is going to be a slot guy. I think Thornton's going to get a lot of playing time on the outside, and he's got elite speed. I think there's some upside with his profile. But I'm with you on that logic. Like, the Patriots are so damn cheap that I think taking bets on them in these late rounds, like, I think that someone's got to score points in the team, and it's not going to be 100% Ramondre, right? So I definitely like where you're going with that.
I love Strong coming out, and I think the fact that Harris is there has people keeping Pierre under the radar. Yeah. I think he's going to have a role, and this is the latest that the second Patriot running back has been drafted as far back as I can remember. Yeah. He's shown that he can receive as well as run between the tackles, and they gave him some goal line. They had no problems with it when Ramondre was out and Harris was banged up. I love Pierre Strong because if Ramondre gets hurt, Pierre Strong's going to be the lead guy.
Yeah.
They'll mix in Harris, but I think he's got a great floor ceiling combo, Pierre Strong, that's going under the radar.
Yeah, I think the James Robinson signing kind of threw people off a scent with that. He was going a little bit earlier before that, and people are, I think, reading that wrong. Like, James Robinson got zero guaranteed money in that deal. I think Strong is the most likely guy to open the year as the number 2 back. So I like Strong. I was taking him a lot. You get up like 20th round in the Superflex big board stuff. I was taking him there.
All right. Which tight end do you like? Do you want to take one now, or do you like one of these wide receivers in the queue?
So I kind of like completing our stack with either McBride or Conklin for Rodgers or Kyler. That's kind of what I like. I think for the playoff.
Which one do you like better? I'm okay with either.
Let's go with McBride. That's a real toss-up for me.
Well, because I don't think Ertz is completely dead, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't either.
So that's, but I mean, again, if you're going to take shares, this is when you do it, when you've got the quarterback.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm not huge on McBride in a vacuum, but I think that like the correlation at tight end with the quarterback, I think is pretty valuable because, McBride pops up for a random 4-catch, 2-touchdown game in week 16. And that could be what really helps us advance. If Mark Andrews has a down week. And
I've got a real interesting, I'm sorry to interrupt again.
No, it's all good.
This guy has some talent.
Puka Nacua.
And he'll go with Stafford. What I like doing with the 18th round, if there's someone who's a great value out there, I'm going to take the great value, right?
Yeah.
But if not, I think this guy Nacua out of Brigham Young, he showed me some things, and I think there's an open spot there. Even if it's maybe not in the beginning of the year. Now, if you have someone else you like, I'm fine, but I wanted to put him on your radar. Have you watched his tape at all?
No, I I've heard his name mentioned on podcasts and stuff, but I don't know much about him. You got the quick pitch. Is he outside guy, slot guy?
He's just a guy who makes plays.
Okay.
He's not small.
Yeah.
I'm also good with the Slayton pick that you had mentioned.
Yeah.
So
I like a lot of these names, to be honest. I like, the Tank Dell pick in a wide open Houston
like
room
Tank
isn't
Dell a
terrible
lot.
either.
I'm okay with you can pick any of these guys and I will be super happy.
Okay. So another late guy I like, not to make this more complicated, I think Corey Davis is definitely getting cut. And I think there's some interesting landing spots when he gets cut, but that's kind of a galaxy brain take. I've been taking some 18th round shares of, but man, they can save 11 million against the cap if they cut him. And they brought in Randall Cobb, they brought in Alan Lazard, like they brought in McCole Hardman. It's like, I think he's going to be gone. But anyways, let me think here. I don't know. I mean, you kind of sold me on the wide receiver room for the Rams.
You could also go 2-2
Yeah.
if you want to go with a Ram that a little more, big play guy. Just tell me.
Let's go. You know what? Let's go 2-2. He was a second round pick a couple years ago. He actually played pretty well down the stretch last year.
And McVay said, it's my fault I didn't play him more.
Yeah. And I think the Rams are the Rams could be fun on offense this year. I know it's kind of a gross take people don't want to hear, but their defense, like you look at their roster on defense, like you're not going to recognize names of players that they have anymore outside of their studs. Like there's nothing on that roster anymore. It's been stripped to its, spare parts. So they could be a team that has to throw a ton to be competitive. So yeah, I like the little Ram stack we built here. I think, if the thing I like about this team is if our early players hit with Garrett Wilson and Cooper Kupp, and those offenses are as good as we think they're going to be, we have the team stacks there. So that makes it a pretty fun sort of correlated team that I like a lot.
Yep. So just to go over it, I did take it off the screen so you could see Sam's pretty face before we go. But we've got Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, and Matthew Stafford at tight end. Thoughts on that, Sam?
Like I said, like it a lot. Two pocket passers that I think are going to give us enough points during the regular season to survive. And then Kyler with the hammer down the stretch, stacked up with Marquise Brown. It's exactly what you want to do with the 3 QB build. I think three guys with upside. We stacked them up with their pass catchers. I think it's how you build if you don't take an elite quarterback.
My weakest. Oh, it just went to. Hold on.
Oh yeah, it disappears from you.
Yeah, it disappeared on me. Completed. Best Ball Mania. All right. So to me, the weakest part of the team is running back, but we've got some good guys: Najee, Pierce, Montgomery, Pirine, and Spears. I don't think it would have, I think it was a little bit of a mistake on my part not to at least have us look at what running backs were there at the end because we were struggling.
Yeah.
But I think I want to get your thoughts on that running back group.
Yeah, I agree with you that maybe I think with that last wide receiver pick, if there was a running back we liked there, that was on the border, right? Like I think this could have ended up as a 6 running back, 7 wide receiver room. Yeah, I think it was on the edge, right? But I think ultimately, like it's not the type of running back room that I am usually building this year. I am often trying to get at least 1 or 2 guys in the first 3 rounds normally. But I think like we talked about at the top of the show, you can pivot off that. Like that's what I prefer doing. But like that's not to say there aren't other ways to build, and that's the optimal way to build. I think we did it a good way where we still got enough stabs at running backs with upside. I really like the David Montgomery upside case. I think, I do agree though that like it feels like the weakest part of our roster, and we need one of those early guys to pay off. We're going to need Najee.
Or we need Tajay Spears to be what I think he can be.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, we need Najee to go back to catching, lots of passes and scoring touchdowns. I think it's possible, right? So
I do too.
yeah,
And I like Pierce a lot. So I think we're okay.
yeah,
But I do, I think self-critique is very important. And I think that, we should have at least been open to a sixth running back. I thought it twice and then I didn't do it. I think our tight ends are fine. And I think our wide receivers are fine.
yeah. Again, and then the wide receivers, just like all the stacks we have. I think it makes a lot of sense. We added a lot of correlation to this lineup, which I think is super important. But yeah, overall, fun team. It's always fun drafting with someone else because it pushes you off your tendencies.
Not my favorite team ever, but I think I think we did okay.
Yeah,
and I very much enjoyed doing it with you. Anything else that you want to say about what you're doing, what's coming up, and then we can get out of here.
No, just you can find me once again on Twitter at Sherman_FFB. I'll be posting a lot of best ball research there throughout the summer. And yeah, you can also find me on ADP Chasing. That's on the Ship Chasing YouTube channel and podcast feed with obviously Pete Overzet, Pat Crane, Ben Gretsch are running that. Davis Maddock is hopping in with me to do ADP Chasing. Obviously a lot of good stuff going on over there. And I think this week, our normal cadence has been Friday shows for ADP Chasing. I think the plan right now is we're going to take this Friday off and then be back next Wednesday during the normal Ship Chasing time. We will do ADP Chasing sort of in the prime time Ship Chasing slot next Wednesday. So yeah, that's the next time you can find me going live, talking some ADPs, talking market movement. But yeah, nothing else. Thanks again, Todd, for having me on. This was a lot of fun. Always fun getting the Best Ball Mania draft in.
Absolutely. I want to thank Sam Sherman, my guest. Next week, we're going to be doing the running backs, the rookies. We touched on it a little bit last week with Theo Greminger. On our episode next week, we are going with Ryan McChrystal, who is brilliant from Sharp Football Analysis, and Ryan Hallam, also amazing with rookies. And the reason I waited a week is I wanted ADP to settle on these guys a little bit, so we really could compare what these experts think of the player in terms of where their ADP is, because we're going into that 2 to 3 month period where ADP doesn't change much because we're not going to have a lot of new information. So that's up next Tuesday. Again, thanks to Sam, and we will see you guys later.